Folks, there are sellers out there causing massive headaches for themselves. I'll get into that and then the latest home prices and insights for the City of Toronto for week ending April 3rd, 2024. Thank you to the many of you that have subscribed to this channel. Those of you that are here every single week and you've not yet subscribed, consider subscribing. Let me tell you what's going on with some sellers out there that really think they are the smartest people on the planet. This buyer buys a house. He's all excited, as many buyers are, as closing approaches. Just before closing, though, the buyer finds out that Metrolinx was buying up a lot of the properties backing onto the Metrolinx property. They were buying up several feet of the backyard. His house was, the one that he bought, was one of those houses. And the way it was set up was that, I mean, the whole expropriation thing, if you can't reach a settlement with, say, Metrolinx in this case, they're going to take the property anyway. So you're better off in reaching a settlement. And that's what the seller did. They negotiated with Metrolinx. They got a price for how many feet that were being taken. I'm not talking about a few inches. Like, they were taking a good chunk of the backyard. So the seller, in their wisdom, thought, I'm going to sell this portion to Metrolinx. I'm going to get the money from that before closing. And then on closing, the buyer's going to close. But the buyer's thinking they're buying the whole lot, not knowing there's a deal with Metrolinx in place. Buyer's buying the whole lot. And the seller is going to get all the money from Metrolinx for part of the backyard and from the buyer for the whole backyard, for the whole property. And then, move on and reap the rewards of all this newfound money. And the buyer somehow, some way is just going to be okay with it when Metrolinx starts breaking ground and doing whatever they're going to do. It didn't quite work out like that for the seller. The buyer found out, was very upset, and went after the seller, and they ended up settling, but it was way worse for the seller instead of upfront disclosing what's going on. And it turns out, it was also found out that the listing agent, the realtor representing the seller, knew about what was going on and didn't say anything to anybody about this. Didn't even advise the seller to, hey, you should speak with your lawyer about disclosing or not disclosing. Like, no advice was given other than, yeah, let's just keep it a secret and we'll see how it goes. That's just absolutely nuts. Another situation. Buyer buys a property, closes, and is excited about landscaping the backyard. They got big plans for the backyard. They were going to do a complete whole backyard renovation. They have the contractors there. One of the contractor notices something off with a big section of the backyard with soil. To make a long story short, the soil gets tested. Turns out it's contaminated. Further investigation, and it turns out that the seller was dumping contaminated stuff into the yard there. I don't know what they were dumping in the back, but it contaminated the soil. It needed to be remediated. It cost tens of thousands of dollars. And for sure, the buyer didn't just spend all this money and, oh, well, they went after the seller. And guess what? They ended up reaching an agreement. And it was way worse for the seller than if they just would have dealt with this ahead of time. Instead of thinking, nobody will notice. What's the big deal? It blows me away how many sellers think that the buyers are just going to lay back and deal with it. Now, I'm not talking about, a light switch not working and you don't disclose that. I'm not talking about small things like that. I'm talking about serious, expensive, illegal things that absolutely should be disclosed, or at the very least dealt with by the seller before the home gets sold. Sellers, don't think that buyers are just going to sit back and accept things. Don't think that buyers, especially for serious things, are not prepared to go through the court systems. They will come after you. And it can be, in most cases, way worse after closing than before. So don't just think buyers are dumb and you're the only smart person out there. And your realtor should be advising you to speak with your lawyer whether something needs to be disclosed or not. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. And if you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, it's really simple. Up here, there's a link to my calendar. Below this video in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you. We'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Now, let's get into the numbers. Okay, folks, let's get right into it. Here's a quick summary. Detached, semis in towns, condos are down here. In this report, we're only talking about the freehold market, the semis in towns and detached, but I put condo here for reference. Generally speaking, if we're kind of going back to the end of February, the middle of January, end of January, prices, generally speaking, average sold prices have been increasing. Not aggressively, but they've been going up. Let's take a closer look. So here's Toronto detached, broken down by week for a whole year. For week ending April the 3rd, sales dropped over the previous week, and sales are quite low. If we go back all the way to the first week of February, they were 129. Last week we did 121, so sales are quite low. Now, how do we explain that? Well, one theory is, and we see it all the time when there's a long weekend, hey, sales drop over the long weekend. And week ending April 3rd includes the Easter long weekend. So that's a possible reason. Now, if the week after sales are continuing to drop, then maybe it's not Easter. But if next week sales are up again, I think we can all say, it was Easter. People, doing their Easter thing and we're not buying. Well, sales are down. The amount of property selling at $2 million went from 35 to 26, so that's down. Average sold price, however, creeped up a little bit more. It's now sitting at $1,687,000, and that's if we look at 2024, that's one of the top. It's not the highest week we've had, but it is one of the top weeks we've had as far as average sold price goes. Compared to last year, 1,687 is 6% lower than where we were this time a year ago. The median price is 4% lower than where we were this time a year ago. And if we look a little bit closer and we look at the dotted line, which is the 4-week moving average, yes, overall, and I've got 3 months on the board here, overall, average price and median price have been trending up, but the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, it looks like it may be starting to come down. So time will tell where we're going to be there, but things may be calming down. Overall prices are up, but we're starting to see a trend downwards. Market's a little bit calmer right now. 121 were sold. 53%, a little bit over half, sold at list price or more. That percentage is down from where we were before. 351 were listed. So listings are up. Active listings, the amount of properties available for sale, that's trending upwards. And months of inventory, also, it's up. We're sitting at 2.4. But I don't want to really focus too much on the 2.4 so much because sales drop, active listings is up, and with the sales drop as significant as sales drop, well, it's going to shoot months of inventory up. It may come back down to be more in line to where we were before next week. So we'll have a look at that. But that's all of the city of Toronto. When we look at the city broken down into different sections, and we say, okay, well, months of inventory for all of Toronto's 2.4, we can see a very distinct pattern here. If we look at East Toronto, so Scarborough, East York, Riverdale, Beaches area, well, months of inventory is way below the overall average, 1.3, 1.6 over here. So East Toronto is actually bringing the average down a bit. If we look at West Toronto, kind of seems it's on par with the overall average. You're looking at months of inventory of 2.5, 2.4, 2.3, 2.5, and again, all of Toronto's 2.4. If we're looking at Central Toronto, so you've got Willowdale, Bayview Village up here, York Mills, Rosedale in the middle, the downtown, downtown, let's not even consider that. There's only one detached property that's sold. But you've got months of inventory in the more expensive parts of the city at 3.8 months of inventory, at 4.6 months of inventory. So the center part of the city is pulling months of inventory higher. So below average, higher than average, about average here in West Toronto. These are different experiences if you're selling or buying. And then there's micro markets within each of these smaller parts of Toronto. So be careful. Who you're working with really needs to understand the dynamics of all these different neighborhoods, especially maybe selling in one area, buying in another. A realtor can't just be in four corners anymore. Like, really needs to understand the bigger picture of what's happening, because what's working in one area doesn't work in another area. Let's take a close look at semis. We went from 61 semi-detached sold to last week, 38 sold. Sales came down for semis. Is it an Easter thing? That's what I'm thinking. Average sold price up a little bit to $1,312,000. Average price for semis over the last 8 weeks or so has been trending up. Compared to last year, 1312 is 9% higher than where we were this time a year ago. The median price is 4% higher. Months of inventory up a bit, now sitting at 1.4. But remember, sales dropped, kind of takes us longer to buy the inventory that we have. So months of inventory in most places we're going to see, especially if sales drop because of Easter, we will see months of inventory jump up a bit. Here's townhouses. 16 townhouses were sold. 3 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Average sold price climbed up a bit to $1,294,000. That's the highest average sold price we've had so far this year. And overall, prices for freehold townhouses have been trending up this year. Compared to last year, 1,294 is actually 6% lower than where we were this time a year ago. The median price is 16% higher versus this time a year ago. And months of inventory sitting at 1.9 for freehold townhouses. Here's a quick summary. 2.4 for detached, semis 1.4, towns is 1.9. I put condos in here just as a source of reference. 2 different markets, freehold, condo market, completely different. And you can kind of expect in the detached, you're either going to see more of a balanced type of market or more of a seller's type of market. Remember, half the properties, 53% for detached, are selling at list price or more. So there is quite a bit of competition still out there. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.